Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tech Inclined. Yes, I'm your host, Chris, as usual. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to get an Open NAT on your Xbox Live video gaming or PS3 or any other console, but mostly Xbox Live is the one that seems to have the most problem. Basically, this is when you have a moderate or a strict NAT, you probably notice it when you're playing games like Halo or Modern Warfare where you can't connect to people and it's really, really annoying. Well, this here is going to go ahead and solve that problem for you. So basically all you need to do is just have access to your router and a computer that's currently connected to it. In order to be able to do this, it's fairly simple. It's really just a matter of finding the setting if you don't have one of the routers that I'm going to be showing here today. First one I'm going to be showing is a Linksys router. Now as you can see on the Linksys router here, I've already gone to the administration page. Logging into a router is basically usually 192.168.1.1 by default. If you put that into your web browser, you should pull up this web page. It'll ask you for a username and password. You just put in whatever the default one is for your specific router, usually admin for the username and the password for Linksys. And then you go to the administration tab. Now underneath the administration tab, you'll notice this UPnP. Now this is a little acronym, stands for Universal Plug and Play. Now NAT, just to give you all a little bit of a background, NAT stands for Network Address Translation, which basically means that you get one IP address for the internet, which is what your modem gives to your router. And in order to have multiple computers connected at once, you have to have what's called NAT, which basically gives your computers on your network a bunch of private addresses, and then when you go to reach the internet, you translate that over into a public address, which is called NATing. Now, Universal Plug and Play, what it does is it automatically forwards ports for you, so that when you go to get on the internet, using, say, Xbox Live or Skype or something else like that, it'll actually improve your video performance or game performance or whatever it is, because you are not having to worry about filtering and such. When your application requests to reach the internet, it basically, the router says, okay, well, that port is not already being used. I'm going to go ahead and forward that across so you can get unfettered access to the internet pretty much. Now, this is important because normally, with all the filtering and everything, with a router's firewall, Xbox Live will come up with a moderate or a strict NAT type, which basically is telling you that a lot of traffic is being blocked and it's really, really hard for people to connect to you. When you enable UPnP, your Xbox and your network will go ahead and request that your router forward all the ports necessary to get online easily and without any kind of filtering and such. So turning on UPnP is basically that. You just hit enable. The moment you hit enable, you hit save settings, your router is going to reboot, and it's going to bring you back up to the exact same page you were on before. Now I'm going to show you on my router here is running what's called DDWRT. It's an open source version of Linksys' Linux firmware. And as you can see right here, I actually got my Xbox already forwarded right there. It was actually added on its own, port 3074, to and from inside to the outside from that IP address. So it's just a nice little representation. As you can see here too, they've also got a computer that's connected on Skype. Helps improve video calling and audio calling if you've got the ability to forward those two ports there. Now on a Netgear router, which is right here, now just keep in mind these are just kind of generic pages that I pulled up. They may be slightly different for your router. Not all Netgear routers are going to be exactly the same. You might have to dig a little bit, but if you go over here underneath of Advanced, there is a UPnP option. That's entirely for Universal Plug and Play. Which even got a nice little description over here. Just check that box, and then just leave the rest of them default and hit apply. On a Belkin router, which is just a static image, I can't show you very well, but underneath of utilities, it looks like here you've got Universal Plug and Play enable, disable, and you just say enable and then hit save settings. And then over here, this one's kind of a kicker. On a Apple wireless router, such as an Airport Extreme base station or Express base station, you're going to see something like this. It's not actually, it says NAT, and then it says enable NAT port mapping protocol. it's the exact same thing. I don't know why they call it something different. Don't ask me why. But basically, this right here, where it says Enable NAT Port Mapping Protocol, which is the same thing as UPnP pretty much. They just decided to give it a fancy name, I guess. That is UPnP on an Apple wireless router. Now, there are other routers like Asus and a couple other ones out there that are a lot smaller branding. I just tried to pick up the biggest and most common ones. Now, if you are still getting a moderate NAT type, here's a few things you can try. First of all, if you're still getting a NAT, make sure that your modem that you got through your internet company is not set up as a router or doesn't do any NATing itself. A lot of two-wire modems or Motorola or SpeedStream by Siemens, those ones for DSL will be set up to be their own router as well, and you have to turn the feature off on them. And some cable modem router combos exist, or if you've got like a Vonage router that you're using, that will cause these same kind of issues. So make sure that you've got all the NATing turned off on everything except for your main router for your whole network. And if you have to have a special setup, you're probably not going to be watching this video, so that's pretty much all you should need. Now, in terms of if you still cannot get it, just because you might have some kind of wonky router somewhere, and it just will not give you an Open NAT, like some of the older Linksys routers, or I know some Belkins are really stupid about this. You do have another option available to you. If you go into some routers, it's applications and gaming or whatever, you're basically looking for this one called DMZ, stands for Demilitarized Zone. It's basically an IP address on your network that has no filtering whatsoever. Every port in the whole world is forwarded. Nothing filtered, no firewall, no nothing. It's open to the internet. This is great for Xboxes because you can set a static IP in here by going to Enable and say this is 192.168.1. Whatever. Most routers will start at 192.168.1.100 as their addresses that they hand out automatically. So if you can pick anything between 192.168.1.2 to 192.168.1.99. So you could say this is, I usually use 50. I don't know why. It's easy for me to remember. I thought it's halfway between the router's IP address and the range that normal routers will go to. And some Netgears will start exactly at 2 and they'll go higher. It doesn't, it just depends on the router. My particular one here, 192.168.1.1 is the IP address for my router. The starting address is 100, and it's got 20 people that can get automatic IP addresses from my router. So 20 people at one time can be connected and get their own addresses on their own. And then once it hits 20, it stops handing out addresses until somebody disconnects. So that's what I've got there. It's on a Netgear, I believe. It's got its own section underneath of. There is a filtering service in here. WAN setup. Here we go. Default DMZ server. You check that, and then you pop in. I don't use Netgear routers, obviously, as you can tell, very often. But you pop this into here, and you can say this one here happens to have an IP address in it. So you put down 192.168.1.50. And then you hit apply, and it will save this one. You basically have to go onto your onto your Xbox, and instead of having an automatic configuration when you go into system settings for network, that page that you're showing, which I'll show you guys in a little while here, once I get over to my Xbox, how to do manual IP addresses. Now, that's pretty much everything on this side here, so let's go ahead and go over to my Xbox.
Alright guys, now that I'm at the Xbox, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the differences between when UPnP is turned on and when it's off, and then also how to set up a static IP address. So if we go ahead and go over underneath your My Xbox heading, go over to System Settings, and of course, Network Setup. You need to test your network connection right now. It signs everybody out. Goes through its little dealio where it tests and blah 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 blah. And the network connectivity is good, internet connectivity is good. Gets to Xbox Live, it tests. Now normally, this is with UPnP turned on. You'll notice that it says Xbox Live connected, didn't give any error messages, all good to go. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. Apply that to my router. This will take me just a minute here while it reboots. Alright, now go ahead and test again. Now we're testing. Comes up the network, connects, internet connects okay. I notice Xbox Live is taking a little bit longer. Now it says, oh, look, you can connect to Xbox Live, but your current network configuration may limit your online experience. Select more info for that. And you go to it and it says, your NAT type is moderate. People on networks with this NAT type may not be able to join certain games, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it says to turn off your router. Yeah, that isn't going to help if you get your settings turned on, but thanks, Microsoft, anyway. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and turn it back on, and you guys will see that as I restart the test, once it applies here, let me just make sure I got internet. Just to show you guys there's no trickery to this. And this is one seamless video, so you know that I'm just sitting here, I just got my laptop. Sitting on my lap here. Just saw on my universal plug-in player, just my Xbox popped up, and there you go. Xbox Live up and going. No error messages. Now, if you have a DMZ with set up, which I already have one set up, it looks like, and you want to set up a static IP address, remember how we were putting it in earlier on the computer into the DMZ section, we said 192.168.1.50 was the example. Right now my Xbox has got an automatic IP address from 192.168.1.104 from my router. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the IP address settings, where it says IP address, subnet mask, gateway, all that good stuff. Go from automatic to manual. And basically you've got the options for applying the IP address, subnet mask, and gateway. The IP address is going to be the one that you set up in the router, so 192.168.1.50. Go ahead and hit done. Subnet mask, if you've got a router that's 192.168.1 something network, is going to be 255.255.255.0 generally. Some networks are 10.something.something, going to be just 255.0.0.0. Gateway is going to be the IP address of your router. So if you've got a router that's 192.168.1.1 or it's 192.168.1.254, whatever your router's IP address is, when you go to configure it, is what you're going to put in here. So mine's 1.1, so I hit done. Done. Primary and secondary DNS servers. You're going to change these. You can leave these pretty much on automatic, but I prefer to set them manually as well. I basically go 192.168.1.1, which is my router again, because my router is my DNS server in this instance. Done. Now you can see it says manual. So that's basically, in a nutshell, configuring Xbox Live with an Open NAT on your Linksys, Netgear, Belkin, Airport, or TWRT compatible router. Thanks, guys. Leave a comment or a question in the comments field, and I'll go ahead and see if I can answer it for you. If you want to see whatever you want to see more of, let me know so I can go ahead and make sure that my next video will be on that. Rate, comment, subscribe. Thanks, guys. See you later.